Good afternoon. It is late afternoon here in Studio D. There's a lot of people moving around in the adjacent room, so we don't have the place to ourselves today like we do when it's on into the later part of the evenings. So what we're doing today is we are finished with an episode from the Soft Goods and Hard Truths series that was called To Sauté or Not to Sauté. And we're taking the set, and right now, as I speak, there's going to be a couple of stills on the screen that show the set as it was for To Sauté or Not to Sauté. And we are going to reconfigure this set for an episode from the 357. And the 357 is where we take different pieces of literature, usually from 100 plus years old, and we just do a straight narration of that. And it is not voice acted. It is not cast. The person who's talking to you right now is the person who's going to be reading the short story. But we do with that is we try to chunk that down into 10 minutes or less and try to provide an opportunity for listeners and viewers to get away from whatever their daily routine is, to get away from the commercial activities that they're involved with, the advertisements, the nonstop marketing, and to simply have, in this case, or in the 357's case, 10 minutes of just letting your mind go. And then we do that within the context of classic literature, classic authors. And so that is what we're building over on 357. We try to keep that as free of commercial influences as possible. And we do think our listeners and our audience members do appreciate that. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave that up there. My mistake. So as I was saying just a moment ago, despite the intended comic relief, this set, Studio D, is about to become the set for the 357. And just to give you a little bit of glimpse, last time we did a walkthrough through Studio D, we included some of the technology. And in this particular case, for those 3 stills or 4 stills that were in the beginning as a reminder of what the To Sauté or Not to Sauté episode was about, we shot those on this. It is probably the only piece of photographic technology in this studio that's older than the Canon EOS M. Nonetheless, it does do very nice work and it captures tremendous images. So we're really, really pleased with that. And this is what we tend to use here in the studio a lot to get the behind the scenes. And as a reminder, as I said a moment ago, we just were talking about To Sauté or Not to Sauté. And that all came from the explaining the lanyard. Again, the lanyard is with me. And although it's not in my hand at this precise moment, I may get it as I step away for revealing what's behind me. I do have my coffee with me. And in fact, why not stop the tease and just go ahead and get the coffee and you can see what is immediately behind me. I'll be right back. So as I said, right behind me, I do have my coffee, right behind me is going to be a co-star of what we do when we reconfigure the set later in the evening. I'm gonna let the light go down a bit and allow this, it is a key light, and we're going to allow it to have an opportunity to show off what it can do in front of the camera. Last time it was behind the camera, but this time around it's going to be in front of the camera. And one of the real joys is this device. And we're just going to give you a glimpse. Right now it's off. I'm not going to touch the key light, and hopefully this is going to come on. How about that? So it's very nice that it comes on full blast. It's set at 99. In theory, it goes to 100, but for some reason, 99 is a little brighter than 100. You can perhaps hear that fan now. But when we set this up later tonight, it's not just going to be going from 0 to 99. We're going to show off a little bit its capabilities in between. Now, this is not product review. This is not gear review. The manufacturer of this has nothing to do. They don't know who I am. They don't know that we're setting this up. The goal is really to show how a little bit of technology, irrespective of the name on it, can help to tell a story. So with that being said, it's now pushing 5 o'clock here in the studio. There's still a little bit of ambient light coming in. I'm going to step away. I'm going to turn this off. Just amazing. And then what we're going to do is let it get a lot darker in here. We'll come back. We'll build it up. We'll reconfigure this table that has the remnants from to sauté or not to sauté. We're going to put a bookshelf, the top part of a bookshelf on that. We're going to spin it around, and instead of it going parallel to the wall behind me, it'll be perpendicular to the wall. And we're going to build that set for the 357. So with that in mind, use this as a temporary reprieve from hearing me talk, and we'll be back probably, who knows. And welcome back. It's much later in the day, and probably to everybody's eyes, much darker here in Studio D. The ambient, and this is what we said earlier in the first half of the video. So the ambient light from outside is completely gone now. It's like 9:15, 9:20, something like that. So it's 3.5, 4 hours since we last spoke. And what I've done in the interim is I've gone ahead and set up the major part of what the set's going to look like for the next two episodes of the 357. And it's one author, Anton Chekhov, The Bet. And we're just going to break that into two pieces. So part one, part two, and it'll be the same set for both of those. Now, what also we're trying to do here within the context of these walkthroughs and behind the scenes is to kind of demonstrate some of the technology that we have access to and that we're trying to integrate into our storytelling. In case you haven't picked up on it in ways I've said, this really is just one person, me, the author, tonight the narrator, the talent, etc. If I look right up there, I can see the smartphone that I'm talking into, but trying to not let those inhibit kind of the dramatic storytelling of the authors that are going to be in the 357. We started off with Charlotte Bronte, Napoleon Spector, and absolutely lovely piece. Who knew she wrote short stories? I did not. And now, the next time through, we're going to do Anton Chekhov's The Bet. Now, The Bet is pretty dark. Not in terms of necessarily people dying or anything like that, but it takes place at night. So the lighting is low by the description of the set. And the story is, magnificently written, but it, Chekhov wanted to ask some questions. And central was, how far is one person willing to go for $2 million? And that's kind of the thesis within the context of that story. And we're going to do everything in our power to give that, do justice to that. But what we have is some of this kind of modest lighting, and that's me just picking up what's on the set right now. And also to my right, you see this light right here. It's actually just a small um, spot, and or maybe even a fill under some circumstances. So that's our baseline where we're coming from each night. But we teased this earlier in the episode, and we teased it in our walkthrough previously about some of the lighting capabilities that we have. And what that does is it kind of extends the day. And I think a lot of times too, people look at lighting and they're just going to throw more lighting, more lighting, more lighting. And certainly, I certainly am not in a position to say, well, hold on. But a little bit more subtle and a little bit more nuanced view and application is, rather than merely adding light, why not consider it pushing back the dark? And, this, again, this does a magnificent little job, in case anybody's wondering. Oh, he's just, nobody can speak this long and certainly make as little sense as William Spear is doing. No, this must be an AI agent. No, it's not. I know that's in the news a lot. So we're not, it's me. I just am sitting in the dark. And, friends and family, I know you're probably saying, well, it's really hardly news anymore. But the purpose of all of this is really to say, what can I do to preserve some shadows, some moodiness, some of the darkness? Like, the bookshelf that's holding up most of the props for the next two episodes. That's a darkish wood. It's like a light chocolate, a milk chocolate, with some darker streaks in it. But central to all of this is a light that we teased earlier, we talked about in the last walkthrough. And right now it's sitting in hold position. And I have the great good fortune of having the remote right here. And if I'm lucky, I've certainly practiced this enough during the day. And believe me, it's every nightmare at all concentrated onto the size of a dime, whether or not this is going to work. So if you're watching right now, please hold your breath for the next 10 seconds. 1, 2. But if I press this button, there should be a decent amount of light that comes on. How about that? What that did was not just light this set, it pushed back some dark. And how exciting is that? To now be able to take a story like Chekhov's The Bed, or any other story that takes place in the shadows, and with very little, overhead. Yeah, I get it. I had to go get that light. Certainly didn't break the bank. But this gives us some tools to creatively and dramatically tell stories. In this case, it's another author's. Now, one of the things that I noticed, and I'm going to do this in a moment, I have some black foam board that I'm going to put in a way that I think gets rid of some of that kind of glare from the light. But I've got another light right here. It's the desk lamp, and we've used this a lot of times. And it's a nice little lamp. Just gives off like a really, really, really orange glow. And a lot of times it's useful. I'm not sure this is going to make it into Mr. Chekhov's story, but let's just turn it on, let everybody see it. It looks like I've thrown an orange into the corner there. And maybe if I turn it around and I push it off to the side, it's got use like that. Who knows? We're going to play around. So we'll put it back where it was. But the big light that I've just turned on is just a hair glaring. And when I bought it, I intentionally bought it to 56 Kelvin, sorry. And so the Kelvin can't be controlled, just the amount of light coming out. I believe, and I practiced this a couple times, but I believe this black foam board will absorb some of that light. It'll just take some of the edge off of it. So I'm stepping right over there. It's just a bit beyond my reach. I'm just going to put this down in front of that lamp, in front of that light, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think that does. I may work on that a little bit more, but it's not so glaring to the eye. So this now becomes the set. I'm sure I'll refine it and fine tune it, and I'll sweat over this for a little bit more. I mean, we already know I'm going to spend some time with this lamp right here, try and figure out what I want to do with that. I want to find out how I can get more coffee throughout the day and on into the evening. But all that is an early preview of the set for two parts, Anton Chekhov's The Bet. Now we've gotten here, again, I want to show and demonstrate just a little bit. We've talked about pushing back dark as the opposite side of adding light. Now, if we take away this light, the darkness comes back. And we are going to turn off this lamp, and we're going to be left with two very modest sources of light. So it's the tiny little fill up on my, just over my right shoulder. And then it's also this magnificent little lamp that I picked up at a local, I don't know, $5 store, I think. So help me if you ask me how much it cost. I'll really be disappointed in you. But this is what we have here in the studio to support the stories that we tell and to make these as enjoyable as possible. I appreciate your time tonight. These help me to bring everybody into the studio just a little bit more so that I don't feel like I'm necessarily simply preaching into the smartphone that I'm trying to stare into. By the way, last time we talked about the smartphone monitor. I didn't have it down here to show off tonight, but it's just above me and it's helping me to stay in the frame, and it's showing me when that light's just a little too glaring and a little bit more acceptable. So, but with all that being said, thank you for your time, and I look forward to having you join us again in the 357. We're going to be doing something with the other channel as well in the near future, Soft Goods and Hard Truths, and this is the same process we go through for them. But thank you again, and I do hope the rest of your day is enjoyable.